Let's go.
All right. Welcome to the show. Good to have you on the Leadership to Wealth podcast. Mandy, our guest today, Mandy Brahnam. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Neil. Thanks for having me. Thank you for doing this show. I'm excited to have you put this out there for the world.
Oh, well, you know, I have to say thank you for joining me on this conversation, for personal leadership, right? Taking leadership in our own lives and that leading to wealth, right? And so hence the name Leadership to Wealth, because it really starts there. And I loved our conversation that we had on the phone last week. It was, I think we were supposed to talk for a couple of minutes, and we might as well have done an entire interview, but now we get to share this interview with everybody else. And so I'm so glad to be able to have you on and be able to share your wisdom with the viewers and with the world.
Perfect. I look forward to it. When conversations can flow that easily, you know darn well that the value is there to be able to share with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what I've got. I've got for Mandy, I've got CEO and owner of Solutions Driven, a real estate company, wife, mother of two, community supporter, public speaker, and you have your own show as well, which I've just found out.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's, how many other things did I miss?
We can kind of go on. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a volunteer in my community. We own a couple businesses, so supportive wife. Yes. I could probably be a counselor sometimes to my friends, good friend, things like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I love wealth. I love creating. I am driven by generating leadership through wealth, for sure.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so first question, before we get to the first question, I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Go for it.
Just to start us off. And yes or no, or whatever comes to you for these questions. So, Mandy, I make friends easily. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I do.
I have a vivid imagination.
Yes.
I worry about things.
No.
I love large parties.
No.
Would you choose fancy dress, fancy shoes, or fancy something else?
Fancy something else.
You gonna let us in on what that would be?
Fancy vacation. Ooh. Fancy condo.
Oh.
Fancy house. Definitely.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Solve complex problems or sweep the deck at a cottage?
I solve complex problems while sweeping decks at the cottage.
Well, we already identified that you're a mother, so we know you have that qualification.
Sweeping is therapeutic.
Yeah. Favorite hobby or favorite sport?
CrossFit.
CrossFit. Okay. And favorite book?
Think and Grow Rich. Read it again.
Yeah. A place in the world you'd like to visit?
Italy.
And do you have, or what do you see as your superpower?
My visions, my solid visions of where I'm going and where I'm going to be in the world.
Okay.
And I'm a darn good listener too, when I want to be.
That's awesome. Okay, great. So obviously those just to kind of get us into it, and in truth, I'm also doing something. I am starting to ask these questions of my guests because I want to see what kind of commonalities come out of it, or what type of interesting things we might learn. from overachievers or high achievers like yourself. So I'd love to see what comes out of that as I go down this road and learning about leaders like yourself. And so, just for people to start to get to know you, where are you from originally, and like where'd you grow up, and
Yeah.
just a
So
little
I
bit of
grew up
background.
in a small town near North Bay, Ontario called South River. You have to drive through South River going from Toronto to North Bay. So there's a lot of people that did have to drive by it. Now there's a highway that goes around it, so you don't really even get into the town. I have an older brother and a younger brother. My parents are still married. We went on, Disney vacations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, I had my first job young. I broke my neck when I was 13.
Okay.
And there was a lot of get up and go, like, why am I laying here? And when I got out of the hospital for the first time, I cut the grass. And like I still vividly remember cutting the grass with this halo on. And all I just needed to do was move. Like I'm a very like active person. Somebody described me as an adult version of somebody that had ADHD. And I'm like, well, good. That means that all those kids that can't sit still can turn out like me, they'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just had this like just needed to keep moving and always be doing something different. So I was a really active kid, soccer, figure skating, bike riding all the time. So I broke my neck. I feel that the universe was just asking me to kind of have some alone time, just a bit of a break from the direction of some of the friends that I might have been following or doing things with. I've always been somebody that if I wanted it done, I would do it myself. If I wanted it done, I would figure out a way to be able to enlist the help of people to be able to get it done. So always had piles of money from yard sales or things that I would, babysitting money, and I just kept counting the money. And I had American money and Canadian money, and I can't say I had, a ton of money, but it was always enough just there so that when I bought my first pair of Doc Martens, you remember Doc Martens,
Yeah.
right? They're like $150 back then. And my dad was like, "You're crazy." And my mom would support me and say, like, she's been saving for this, like it's her money. And so I always had the delayed gratification for purchases because I knew how darn hard I had to work to get it. And so so things just kept going like that, the delayed gratification, saving a lot of money, being very savvy. But then, I'm married. I've been married for 18 years. We have a 17-year-old and 15-year-old. And we got so far in our life, and then 2008 happened. We were doing well. Like you would have asked us, we would have said, we're doing really well. Yeah. We had a house. We'd moved into a new house.
Wait. I want to stop you for a second. I want to come to this, but you said something that I thought was really interesting. You talked about delayed gratification, and but how did you get that at such a young age? I mean, yeah, you worked hard, but come on, what kid really realizes that?
I don't think I realized it until later on in life. There was a point in my life that I started to go, well, why am I who I am? Yeah. And not questioning why I am who I am, because I don't want to change who I am, right? So I'm sharing that with a lot of people. Like, I just said, this is who I am. Where did this come from, or how long has this trait been around? Yeah. And so I am this frugal person. I am somebody who works really hard and thinks 10 times before I buy something. So I have, and when I trace back the trait of delayed gratification, I've had it for so long. Mm-hmm. And why? I'm not sure. Do you remember, I used to pick berries all the time, like the wild berries that would come out. Okay. And I remember like when it was blueberry season, like I would watch those blueberry bushes until, from nothing to bloom till they had the white little blueberries on them until I could finally pick them. Yeah. And I think there's something about, nature that allows us to have that. When raspberries are blooming, eat the raspberries. Don't go and want to buy chocolate. You need to eat the raspberries. When the blueberries are there, they work so hard. You can't have them in September and you can't have them in February. You need to eat them when they're there. Yeah. And so like this, yeah, I just kind of traced it back. And and realized that that was one of the traits that I've had for a very long time.
Wow. Okay. Um, okay. So you you've your family had these bushes at home and in the
They're just wild blueberry bushes, but
okay,
I
nice.
remember just like watching over them like a hawk to say
Wow.
like, when are they gonna blossom?
Yeah.
When, so that I can pick them and then, make my my blueberry pancakes, my blueberry
Yeah.
muffins. It was like something that I was looking forward to all year.
Wow. That's so interesting that something as simple as blueberry bushes that were just growing would develop something like that in you, right? And
Yep, yep.
who knows what people have that might represent that for them in their own life, right? If you grew up in Toronto, you might not have blueberry bushes, but
Right.
it was something else, right? But that's interesting that you developed that at a very young age.
Mhm.
That's awesome. And so then, sorry, you now let's come forward. You went from that school, and then you went into
Yeah, I kind of sometimes I jump over my college university because there's a lot of people that I don't have a how would I say it this way? I've started to reframe it to be able to say I have a PhD in results. I didn't get that from a certain institution,
right.
but so I went to university, dropped out, traveled to New Zealand and Australia, came back, focused as anything, went to Georgian College, met my husband, the love of my life, didn't finish my college. So I'm actually, a successful college university dropout.
Yeah.
Nothing higher than a high school diploma. Although I do a lot of self-education still right now. So there we are, 2007, and we wanted more for our own financial future than we were realizing we were getting out of following the norm. So we bought our first rental property, nothing too crazy about it. 7 years later, I refinanced it and I had a check in my hand for $38,000. I was like, oh my gosh, one property, like this is cool. But then I thought, like, this is supposed to be to supplement my retirement, my husband's retirement, our two children's education, weddings and vacations. I'm like, one property is not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And it was also just a time that I realized that Larry and I are hard workers, and we wanted to be able to make sure that what's an industry we could get direct results out of the effort that we put in.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in a dental office for years when my children were young, so it could be part time, and it was a clean environment. It was it did us well,
Mm-hmm.
but you'd say to them, hey, why don't we change something? They're like, no, Mandy, no, we don't need to change, keep everything the same.
Yeah.
So I wanted an environment where the effort that I put in was directly related to the results that I got out, and that's what brought us into investing into real estate.
Wow. Okay. And so you had this rental property that you got, and when did you get that rental property?
We got that first property in 2007, and our refinance was in 14. So the other interesting thing that kind of happened, a couple years before 2014 was we joined a network marketing company. Now, maybe many of you are kind of going, what? How does a network marketing kind of company come into this? But it was the first time that we were exposed to Think and Grow Rich and, Jim Rohn and Darren Hardy's Success Magazine. And we turned our car. So in 2012, when we joined that network marketing company, we turned our car into a university on wheels. Right. And we started to listen to, Sarah Blakey and Mr. Dwyer there, Wayne Dwyer, and you're just all these different books and people. I was like, where has this been our whole life, right? And one of the quotes that I still say to this day, often, almost everybody, is work harder on yourself than you do on your job, whatever your job might be. Meaning, how can I become a better person, a better listener, a better communicator? How can I get better? Meditation, walking, running, jogging, health factors, just social factors. How can I be a better person? And just because most of the time when you think about education, you're like, oh, I took this course I got a new certificate for work. I have to go get recertified. You're like, that's great, but that's for your job. What are you doing for you? And so that was an unlocking for us, that work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And so along comes real estate, and we were like, we can put ourselves into this. We know that the direct risk that we put in, or the perceived risk, however people want to look at it, was going to be directly related to the results that we got.
And so what was the instigator to buy that first rental property? I mean, that first property.
I wanted a rental property. Larry kind of, said no. And then one day, I said, so he gave me a list of criteria that if I find a property that met his criteria, he would be open to hearing about it. Okay. And I found it. We still own it to this day. And so we bought this rental property. We used we put a second mortgage on our primary res for the down payment. And then all the expenses from that property were covered. So it didn't cost us anything. Yeah. And all we had to do was manage it. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but where did the idea for rental properties come from? I mean, blueberries, save your money, rental property.
Yeah. So, something I use, you ever seen somebody that drives by in a Lamborghini or a Bugatti? What do you think to yourself when you see that car?
No, that's nice.
Okay.
Unless the color is terrible, right. In which case then I think other things.
I've always thought, I wonder what they do to make their money.
Okay. Yeah.
And being able to, so the vision would be to sit in that car with that person and be like, what did you do? What do you do? Where do you get your money? And how can I learn how you can get your money? So, some people would be like, oh, must be nice, whatever. I say, if they can do it, so can I. I just need to ask them the right questions to figure out if I'm on the right path. So when I was 16, we had a figure skating coach, and she owned a hardware store, and her husband owned a gas station, and they had rental properties, and they went on vacations, and their daughter, who was a little older than me, she got a convertible. And I was like, what do they do? And I need to know what they do. So they had a younger daughter. And so some of them went away on vacation, but the younger daughter couldn't. And they needed somebody to be able to drive a vehicle and watch her. So they asked me to stay at their house with their younger daughter to drive her around to all of her activities that she needed to do while they were gone away.
Yeah.
So I got to live in their house. I got to, she left me money. She left me keys to the car. And so it was like this sense of, this is what their lifestyle was.
Yeah.
And I liked it a lot. And so I was like, how can I do this? And I was like, well, they own a business. So they're hardworking. They were always, at work or with their girls. So it was very clear that their work ethic was crazy, but her business had been generationally passed down as well. So now you're starting to look at, okay, yes, there's instant millionaires like Zuckerberg or something, right? Or instant billionaires, but what are his children going to be doing? And, so that's not how all businesses have started, is just, in that first generation started off. So I've always had this innate view of wealth and wondering who has it, how do I get it? Let me ask them some good questions. Something I share with people is the quality of your life is based on the quality of questions that you ask. So instead of just saying, oh, must be nice, that's not a question at all. You're not even asking a question. So the universe isn't giving you any answers, because you're just making a statement. And so you can say, hey, I wonder what that gentleman does. I wonder how he gets his wealth. I wonder, how other people are able to have a lifestyle like this. Well, that's a good quality question, because now the universe is starting to create and generate you to have the answers for that.
Yeah. Wow. That is really powerful. It's interesting when you asked the question about the car, and I thought, I don't normally think about what do they do, but that is a very powerful question. Mind you, most of the time, if I ever see a car, it's usually a Lamborghini or something like that. It's usually someone flying down the 401 or something like that. But and then you think, You think other things, but because he's
Well, so we vacationed last summer in a place, Severn, called Gloucester Pool. It's in
okay.
Port Severn, and there's helicopters that go over on Friday nights,
Yeah.
and I call them the billionaire helicopters going to their cottages, right?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of realize that there's a certain amount of wealth that you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about traffic on the 400 on a Friday afternoon
Yeah.
because there's
That's
no
good.
traffic in the sky. So then you're like, what did they do to get there? And
Yeah.
how can I continue to generate my wealth to be able to get there as well? I'm not sitting here driven by money to be like, oh, I'm a little Scrooge and I'm hoarding money. But
Yeah.
it's really cool to start to awaken. I call it like my wealth awareness.
Yeah.
And I'm questioning, how do I continue to grow my wealth awareness? So I mentioned to a friend last week that, I had a couple instances, and she was like, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm taking an apartment building course right now on how to develop apartment buildings. It's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. And, the case study that we had was 270 units,
Yeah.
$112 million build.
Wow.
Like usually we're talking, we just keep our numbers small so that we can all understand them. Well, screw that. I want to understand $112 million. I want to be able to say 112 the same way that I say 112 million, right? It's just zeros. We're just adding zeros on the back. So that was one way that I had increased my wealth awareness. And then there was another one. I was chatting with a friend, and she'd indicated that her father had lost $50 million in the stock market in March.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Right? That to me raises my wealth awareness, because most people would be like, that's ridiculous. Why would he do that? And the point being is that his wealth is probably that's 10% of it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, he's, as much as you have $100 that fall out of your pocket and you're like, damn, that's dumb.
Yeah.
He's probably thinking the same thing. So, you just, those kind of awarenesses of larger amounts of money are a great way for you to be able to raise your wealth awareness. So here's one that takes you backwards.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever hear somebody that says, oh, I was on the phone for Rogers for 2 hours, and you're like, what were you on the phone for? They tried to raise my bill by $5. And I just go, I don't think that's a very good use of my time. And if somebody's going to charge me $5 more, I need to figure out a way to make 10 times that. So that $5 becomes that like 50 million to that guy, right?
Yeah.
So Grant Cardone discussed a lot that people spend 95% of their time saying, how do I reduce my expenses? So if this is their income, how do I reduce my expenses, right? Can I turn my lights off? Can I have a shorter shower, have cold showers, eat leftovers, like all these kind of things to try and reduce your expenses. Spend 2 hours on the phone with Rogers, that's one.
Mm-hmm.
And only 5% of the population says, how do I make more money?
Yeah.
So I'm a, how do I make more money?
Yeah.
How do I make more money? And not in a greedy kind of way, but in a way that be able to say, like, how can I serve, find a way to help the many, for service to many leads to greatness, said Zig Ziglar. Yeah. And so you're just trying to figure out a way to help more people, which raises your income. But you have to not focus on the 95% of the time trying to reduce your expenses. Mm-hmm. You're not going to spend those 2 hours on the phone with Rogers at the same time as you could be analyzing deals or listening to some great podcasts. Maybe you can be on hold and listening to a podcast at the same time. That would be a good use of your time. But yeah.
Wow. That was a whole bunch of things there. I mean, some of the things that some of the things that just jumped out at me were just the consciousness and awareness of money, of wealth, and because we're so many times we can be taught that it's not something to look at. It's not something to talk about. There's all of these unsaid rules. Sometimes they're said, sometimes they're unsaid. You don't ask this question.
That's right.
You don't dare ask someone, what do they do? How did they get that? I mean, that would be rude. But even to start bringing yourself there opens up a whole world of possibilities. I'm sitting here thinking, the next time I see a helicopter go over my head, I'm going to start wondering whose whose helicopter that is, and
Right.
how.
Who buys the penthouses?
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's a great thing to be able to know,
yeah.
because then you're like, here we are worried about, how do I afford a condo on the 15th floor? And I go, who's buying the penthouses? Because I want to know how they are able to pay for a penthouse. Who are these people? Where are they? What are they doing? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was, I guess, just back in at Christmas time, and I was having a conversation with some people, and they were asking about business, and I just started, talking a little bit about it, and I just happened to be mentioning about some deals, and I was talking in the millions,
Yep.
and then I caught myself, and I realized, oh, I just threw that number out in this group as a normal part of my business, normal part of my day. And but I realized that a number of the people that were there are not used to that number. And then you realize, well, for me, I actually felt bad in that scenario
Oh,
because
don't feel bad.
because I had thrown it out like that, and I apologized, and they said, no, 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 it's great. We want to hear about it. And so then I thought, oh, that's good. But from what I'm hearing you saying, I'm thinking, yeah, that we need to have more of that consciousness and awareness of it. Or for me, I need to have that awareness of it. And I think that's a great point that you bring up.
Yeah.
You know,
Create an environment where you can have these conversations, so that, I was at the cottage last year as a family gathering, and this one girl was talking real estate, and my nephew was like, stop. If you need to talk real estate, you need to talk to Auntie M. That's it. Don't ask anybody else those questions. You just need to talk to her. And
yeah,
I thought, that's cool, because there are times that I want to be quiet, because, what I really like to talk about is real estate and wealth and
right,
growth and
right.
goal setting and, stuff like that. And if somebody's not into that and they're talking about some show that they're watching on Netflix and whatnot, no, don't get me wrong, I've watched shows on Netflix, so like
Right.
we all have our stuff, but that's just not where my conversation likes to go. So I sometimes go quiet, and
Mhm.
people will think, many people go, how can you be quiet? And I said, well, I'm quiet when I'm in an environment where people don't want to know the real me. But when I am in that environment, I definitely talk. Uh, so because he was like, Auntie M, you need to go talk to her. She's the only one that can talk about real estate. It's also a place where people now call me and they're like, hey, Mandy, we're looking at buying a new house. Again, I'm not a real estate agent, right?
Yeah.
So there's no like dollars and sign commission if somebody has to ask me a question. But they're like, what would you do with this house that we currently own? I said, great question. Thank you. And I'm happy to be able to share with you. And I also sometimes lead with disclaimers a little bit. Like I'll ask questions. Is it okay if I share my thoughts on this thing right now? Okay. Because I want to make sure that somebody is okay with me giving my feedback. And by them just acknowledging that they've accepted my opinion or my thought process, it's they're a little bit more open to it, so what's one, there was a gentleman the other day that said, oh, his real estate agent is, not focused very much and not able to find him a lot of good deals right now. And I wrote down, I said, or I actually had responded and I said, no problem. I've had to graduate from real estate agents as well. That, they were a great agent for you and then you grew past them.
Right.
It's a sign of growth and, to some degree, congratulations. Well, he gave me this sob story about how it's actually a really close friend of his, and he doesn't know how to kind of get him turned on. He's really ready to buy some more assets, but his friend, real estate agent, has a lot going on in his life. So of course there's this big response that's coming to my head, and I was like, I don't know if this guy is ready for this. So I said, permission to speak freely and give you my response. And he said, yes, please, I would love it. I was like, leave your friend. He's not a friend if he's holding you back from your goals. You are more worried about him than you are about yourself. I want you to put yourself first, put your own oxygen mask on first. If you want to buy real estate, don't give me, he's your excuse for not doing it. That's like saying, oh, my husband has a sore knee, that's why I'm not able to jog. What?
Yeah.
That's stupid. Like that's just, so it
Yeah.
sounds silly when you say it that way, but you're like, well, it's my friend and he's my real estate agent, so I really have to wait for him. Yeah, no, it doesn't. So I lead with that disclaimer a lot. Like, is it okay if I share my opinion, just so that I make sure people are, okay with it? Or just asking them, can I ask you a few more questions to be able to, give you my full outlook on the situation? Just so I'm not, they see that I'm not just giving a surface level, opinion, that I'm actually collecting the right data to be able to, give them a few more perspectives. And a lot of times, keep in mind, when somebody wants change, that change is not comfortable on the other side. Oh, I'd like to be financially free. No problem. I'm
Yeah.
just going to ask you super nicely not to eat out every night of the week. I'm going to ask you to put away your credit card and take it off of your Amazon Prime account, and like just little things. And that's a great step to be able to get into financial freedom. And if they go, what? I'm never taking my credit card. Okay, fine. Like, you're obviously not there yet, because the other things that I was going to ask you to do would get really difficult. So
Yeah.
if surface level stuff is difficult for people to take, they're not going to go deep for you.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I've got to ask the question because you brought it up a couple of times. So then, wealth,
Yeah.
because you love getting into it, love leaning into it, and what is that to you? What does that mean to you? And when you
Freedom.
think about it,
Freedom to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, and where I want. And
mm,
nothing that's a financial reason for me to ever choose not to do it.
mm,
So, I mean, it could be a simple life. I'd like I want a cottage. I want a beautiful cottage. I want a dock and a beach at my cottage. I want a helicopter. I want it, like, if I choose to want a helicopter, I want to be able to ride in a helicopter. I can see myself in a tall office in Toronto overseeing, overseeing the city. But when I'm up there, I'm in a boardroom and I am speaking to project managers about, the latest development that we're working on. So like wealth is there, wealth is freedom, but freedom isn't like my perception of retirement is not retirement. I want to be able to I do what I love what I do, and I get paid beautifully to do it.
right.
That's what I just want to be able to lead that life.
Yeah. I think that idea of freedom and retirement is a funny thing because a lot of people have bought into this story of, you work for a number of years and then you're going to be able to be free and, and sit back and enjoy your retirement and maybe do nothing. And the reality is that most people that do retire into that and do nothing don't make it very long because we're creatures that are driven, right? And if you enjoy what you do,
Yeah. You never have to work another day in your life,
yeah,
because work is not work. Work is enjoyment.
yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So
Okay, great. So wow, there are so many more questions that I want to ask and I want to get into, but we now with this new format that we're doing,
yeah.
this is the part. Now the next part that I want us to get into, we're going to move into talking about wealth some more, and we're going to talk about specifically some of the things that you do and you teach. So let's get into that portion now. Okay, so we've got the second half now, and we're gonna talk about you in real estate. And can you tell us a little bit about what you do in the world of real estate to build wealth, and then we can get into
Yep.
that a little bit more.
So we started off buying, single family homes and small duplexes. And we realized that we had more deals than we had cash
Mhm.
capital to be able to fund. But because of the momentum and the energy that Larry and I had as we were doing this, we were attracting people that said, hey, Mandy, the next deal that you have, I'd like to be part of it.
Mhm.
Like, hey, I've got a fourplex. Hey, I've got a triplex. Hey, I've got a, variety of other properties. So here we are, 6 years later, and we have transacted on
Where
over
were those people coming from?
from a variety of real estate investing groups
Yeah.
that I was part of, networking groups that we would all go to learn about real estate. We would all, we were awakened to there's more out there. And majority of millionaires in this world are millionaires because of real estate. There's more millionaires created because of real estate than any other ways in the world, right?
Yeah.
And you dig deep and you go, that's because this family owned all the land under the railroads, and they owned half of Manhattan, and you just kind of like, it wasn't that these families, these wealthy families had owned a business. It was the land under the businesses that these people had owned, and then the ones that have built apartment buildings and stuff like that, they built them in the 70s, and they're quadrillionaires, or they're multimillionaires in the 2000s. So it takes 40 years to be able to have generated this kind of wealth. So real estate was definitely something that we knew we wanted to turn to. So that's kind of where the partners came from, these groups that we were going to, where everybody had just been awakened to, what do you mean I don't have to invest in RSPs if I can put them someplace else? What do you mean don't pay off your mortgage, to use your mortgage as a down payment for a house? Why would I have a mortgage? Well, because your mortgage is at 3%, and this property that we're buying is like a 20% return. So I'm pretty sure that there's a 17% spread ahead. And then you have people going, what? Like, I was happy making 5% on my RSPs, and you're telling me I can make 20 over here? Like, so it was just, this awakening.
But
So,
isn't it safer for me to just pay my mortgage rather than doing that?
well, it depends on your risk tolerance, Mr. D'Souza. Right? Not everybody is ready to be able to invest in real estate. So, and if you're not, I love you. I love you because you're not. And when you are, if you ever are, then you can come out. I had one of my uncles that came up to me and he said, Mandy, I'm really worried about you. And I said, Uncle, I'm worried about you. Okay, because he is perfect. He followed the exact amount, the trajectory that the government wanted him to do. Well, guess what? His wife can't retire right now. She is like, their job, their financial situation. They had, a situation with a child. She's not retiring anymore. And I was like, how's that doing for you? You did everything that the government had said. A few little things kind of went wrong, and now you're not able to retire when you thought you were. So if somebody is ready, they're ready. And if they're not, I love them because they're not. Okay. And so as we were doing these deals, we just had people that were like, hey, come on board. So we created ourselves to be, I'm known as a joint venture queen. I do a lot of joint ventures, which is, what is a joint venture? A joint venture was when two people come together, you each have unique skills and assets to bring to the table. I bring my knowledge, my wealth of my energy, and my project management, property management, and my partners bring in their capital. So they've worked really hard to be able to get the capital that they have. And so together we go and we buy assets, and we mutually share the returns. So we've transacted on 88 properties in 6 years. We took our wealth from, we started off, I share with the audience, what's your net worth? When was the first time when was the last time you checked your net worth? What's your total assets minus total liabilities to get your net worth? And start to, it's so simple, that game of cash flow by Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
As simple as it was, we played that. And then I took that game sheet, right? The game sheet that you're a plumber and you've got the game sheet. I did that for Mandy and Larry. And I figured out how much cash flow we had, how much passive income we had, how close we were to getting out of the rat race. And I was like, oh, we are not close to getting out of the rat race. We need to increase our passive income, and we need to do, and how would we get there? And we were like, okay, add another asset and keep the debt going down and the asset going up, and get that cash flow from that property to add to our thing. And in 2018, we were out of the rat race.
Wow. Okay, so So when you talk about these joint ventures, and what are these joint ventures? I know that you had an acronym for them that you were telling me about, and can you tell us
Oh
a
God,
little bit about that?
what was my acronym?
It was the uh, uh, Burr, right? Is that
Oh,
what you were telling me about? Yes,
yes.
that's right.
The
Yes.
burr. Okay. So, yes, one of the type of properties that I can offer to my partners is the
Yeah.
burr strategy, which is
Okay.
burr is buy, renovate, refinance, rent out to tenants, and repeat.
Yes.
Yes, that's one of the
Yes.
strategies that we offer to potential joint venture partners to say, here's this 20-unit building. We can buy this building, we can renovate the properties, turn it over, and then we'll say in 5 years we can refinance that. That
Mm-hmm.
happens to be a small duplex. We could probably do a refinance in a year. Now, a lot of people are probably going, what do you mean a refinance? What does that even mean, Mandy? Well, because of course, typically in our minds, we're like, get into our mortgage in our primary res and pay it off. And only those that ever need money do they ever refinance to be able to pull out that money and go buy a boat or buy that cottage or, pay down some accumulated debt, things like that. But our point of refinancing is to be able to keep the property at a high loan to value, because we can do more with the money than the banks do as it's sitting there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So
You're going to be able to reinvest it and then
look at a mortgage on that 20 unit for 3% interest,
right.
and then we can go and do another one. And the return on your investment, again, I say I don't get out of bed for less than 30%, which typically means minimum amount of returns for my partners is 15%. I have, I don't usually share too high of ROIs because they don't necessarily grasp it, but I'm offering my partners like 20% returns many of the times. And how do you calculate the returns, right? This isn't cash in your pocket, so it's not as if. So if we talk about $100,000, if somebody said, hey, if I borrowed your 100,000, I'll pay you 8%, okay? And so at the end of the year, you would have $108,000. Well, so my properties, because we invested in real estate, we have cash flow as one way to be able to calculate the return. Passive appreciation, which is the amount that the asset goes up in value. Active appreciation, which is the amount that your property is increased with renovations. And then your mortgage pay down, which is just every month your tenants pay your mortgage and the principal gets paid down. So at the end of the year, it's not as if you get back $120,000 from your 20% ROI, because that $100,000 is locked into your asset. But what we can say at the end of 5 years, when we do a refinance, we're able to give you the whole $100,000 back plus, 20% annualized. So you'd actually get $200,000 back in 5 years and still own the asset.
And so this is just one of the options that you give to people.
Yeah. So there's some people that don't have the stomach for big renovations, and they're just like, oh, I don't like that stinky bathroom. I don't like a foundation wall that needs repaired. I don't like, to have to worry about a new roof. And I understand that. Like for the reward, remember there's an equal amount of risk that goes along with that reward. And so some people go, I don't need that much risk. So I'm okay with a lower risk property. So we'll look at a turnkey asset. So actually in your city, Kingston, Ontario, we've got a beautiful triplex. We bought that last September, so we haven't even owned it a year. Turnkey. So turnkey meaning literally turn the key and the property is ready to go for you. We bought it, we bought it one day on the market. We were really fast on getting it. We think we secured a really nice price for a triplex, and it cash flows at $1,500 a month. So that means that the mortgage so the tenants pay us, the mortgage gets paid, insurance, taxes, any utilities, property management, maintenance, like any expenses from the property. Over and above that, it cash flows at $1,500.
Yeah, after all expenses.
After all expenses, yeah. So so that's a great asset for my partners. The difference, a big difference between a BRRRR, which is that buy, renovate, refinance, and rent, is that it's typically faster. You get to refinance it because you're the one that's putting in the work to be able to increase the value.
Right.
But the turnkey properties, yes, there's not as much risk. So, typically the rewards are a little bit less. But you don't have to do anything. And in 5 years, you can, refinance out the, any capital that you've got into it. And we get really strategic. So part of my growth and leadership is how to become a strategic real estate investor just by partnering with me and not having to learn it. It took me years to be able to build up these strategies and like tens of thousands of dollars worth of coaching and groups and masterminds and stuff. So, if you want it almost like the fast track to an expert, it's a great way to be able to partner with somebody or even yourself, right? You're like, you can learn how to be the bank and you can go to these courses on how to, be the bank, or you can just, come in and do a deal with you and you walk them through all the education you already have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's the old saying of experience is the best teacher, but try not to make it all your own, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to leverage your experience, people are able to, figure out their level of risk. And so are these the two main options that you would provide to someone, to some of your investors? Okay.
Yeah. And typically now it's a little bit larger stuff, whereas before, there was a lot of properties that were low priced, but now, my minimum investment is roughly about 200,000 to be able to get into a deal, a BRRRR, recycle it around, or have it locked in place. So it's, it's continually leveling up and keeping up with the market. I mean, the best time to invest in real estate was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So don't kid yourself. I'm definitely still buying assets, but we just have to make sure that the strategy matches the market. So even in a COVID market, which we're in right now, there still are definitely deals. You just position yourself. Robert Kiyosaki said something a little while ago, and he said that he realized he had leveled up when the bank was calling him and saying, Robert, we've got this property that the owner is unable to take. And so the bank had repossessed it. And they were trying to figure out who they were gonna sell this asset to or what they would do. And they called up Robert Kiyosaki to say, we want you to buy this property. So during COVID right now, I have sellers who are just like, Mandy, can you just come and buy my property? And I also have people who are like, Mandy, do you want to borrow my money? So when you create yourself as a solid, knowledgeable person in the industry, that you start to attract people just by the person you become. It takes time, takes dedication, it takes focus for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, that obviously makes sense to me. Being in private lending, I'll have other brokers that will, of course, talk to me and say, "Oh, wow, that's, you were lucky to get in and do that stuff." And I'm thinking, no, it took years of, talking to people, teaching people about this aspect of the industry that a lot of people don't know about. And so, likewise for yourself, obviously, it's taken years of educating. You talked about public speaking and doing that sort of things and getting yourself out there.
They say I want to say it was Oprah or maybe Maya Angelou. She said that luck is the definition of luck is when opportunity meets preparedness.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not lucky, or you can call it luck, sure, however you want to title it. But really, we have been prepared to watch for the opportunity, which happens to make us look lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there is a fear around hard work or around doing the work?
Yeah. A lot of people want get rich quick. It's like they want to skip the hard work. Success looks an awful lot like hard work in disguise.
Yeah.
You don't just, we can sit here and talk about Mark Zuckerberg, but Mark Zuckerberg didn't just show up. What he's had to deal with is probably more than what majority of our world would ever want to have to deal with. And so the more that you're able to take on, the more successful you're going to be. But it's comfortable. Remember, this is that comfort zone. It's comfortable to go to a box, to go to a job, and get paid the same amount. How many people have been at the same job for 20 years and they complain about it?
Yeah.
And so my story that kind of comes up, my son was young, he was on the bus, and this girl was sitting beside him, and they got in trouble on the bus. Well, he didn't like
Uh-oh.
getting in trouble,
Yeah.
right? So he comes in and he was telling me about this girl and how she got him in trouble. And I looked him up and down, and I said, "Are your legs okay?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, then get up and move." Like, the
Yeah.
point being that I'm trying to teach a
Yeah.
6-year-old that you have the choice to be able to change this. So stop complaining about the seat that you're in, the person that you're beside, none of that stuff. You can go and move. So a lot of times people, they don't even realize they're stuck. And then heaven forbid that you try and ask them, there was this one lady, and she was just like, "Well, wonder what, the best vacation was." And so we were talking about the best vacation. I thought, well, this is a cool conversation. I'm okay with this. And she said, "That's what I'm going to do for my one and only vacation." I was like, "Your one and only? Why are we talking such a big vacation? Like, freaking go to Cuba. Start off in a little spot. Drive to Myrtle Beach. Like, I don't care. Like, you can do all these little things first." But she was like, had this thing that she could only afford. Well, it must, for you, Mandy, maybe you can have more than one vacation, but we can't just afford these things. And I was like, I don't know, girl. Like, but you're not asking any other ways to be able to say, how can I afford more than one vacation in my lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
So how can I? Not I can't. Not, I can't afford it. That's too expensive. Those are not words that I use, because those are all just in proportion to your wealth awareness.
Mm-hmm. So how do people then decide between these different strategies, between the BRRRR or turnkey?
It's a risk tolerance.
Yeah.
It's a timeline. Sometimes those BRRRRs.
What are some of the risks that people are have to look at?
The risk. So let's even just talk about the risks of real estate, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You are now looking at your financing. You need to be able to make sure that you're in a good product,
Mm-hmm.
that you are getting a good interest rate, that you have, where did the money come from? If you got an inheritance and it's sitting in a bank account, that bank account's moving backwards right now. So I'm kind of a weird person to be able to give the risks of investing in real estate, because I usually have a lopsided one to be able to say there's more risks not to invest in real estate than there are to invest.
Yeah.
But a risk, if you want to do it on your own, like without a partner per se, you've got the risks of learning, the risks of taking on and hiring a good property manager. If you do that, did you hire the right one? Did you get the right insurance coverage? Did you, what if you're going to do the work yourself? Are you going to manage the properties? Do you know how to manage tenants? Oh, anybody can manage tenants. Until they don't pay. Do you know what are the risks of not knowing the landlord tenant board in Ontario? There's a lot of risks if you don't get the right education, surround yourself with the right people that know what they're doing. But then the rewards are, any little issue that you're dealing with in 5 years, 10 years, you're going to look like a genius. Going to be like, you bought that asset if you bought that asset in 2000, what's it worth right now? Do you really care that you had tenant issues and that that you did a $10,000 renovation? No. There's a gentleman in Wasaga Beach, and we knew his son. We went and we bought his used washer and dryer, because he was putting all new appliances in the whole property, and he was yipping the whole time. He was like, he was Italian, so he was like sweeping up and whatever. So I said, how much? What is the renovations costing you here? $10,000. These tenants, they took me for a loop. They lived here for 3 years, and they, here we are. We're having to clean up this whole place because of them. I'm like, okay. Beautiful neighborhood. So I said, how much did you buy the property for 3 years ago? 300,000. I said, how much is it worth right now? He said, 600,000. I said, wow, it only cost you $10,000 for the value of your asset to go up 300. He stood there and he was just like, oh. He said, nobody's ever explained it to me that way. Right. I said, I know, because we focus on the 10,000 and we're forgetting about the fact that our asset has just gone up in value. Wow. And nobody did that. The market did that. right? People that buy in Wasaga Beach just bought in Wasaga Beach. Next thing, well, they buy in Toronto, and next thing you know, they're millionaires because they didn't do anything to their house. They just happened to buy a house, and the house went up in value. That's one of the aspects. That's one of the benefits of real estate. I also have a little bit of a saying that says, when Donald Trump tweets, it doesn't affect my sixplex in Barrie, Ontario. Right? Like, you know, you're in the stock market and Trump puts out a tweet and your stocks go zoop, right? Or you're not sure where your money's going to be. There's all this, you know, fluctuation. Well, the sixplex in Barrie, Ontario, the only one that has control over that is me. So I control what's going on inside. I control if I can get the tenants to pay or not. I mean, there's a little bit that's outside of your control, but not as much, right?
So what do you do with the question, if people are asking you about real estate versus the stock market? You know, hey, I'm trying to figure this out, and, you know, okay, you've got this turnkey investment here, but, you know, why wouldn't I just put it in the stock market?
Yeah, that's the easy, straightforward one. So let's just say that it's $100,000 and someone's going to put $100,000 in the stock market. And what kind of return are they going to get? What's a good return that somebody could get in the stock market? You tell me, because I want your number.
I'm probably a bad person to give that to, but
10%.
Okay, great, 10%. Let's
10%. Okay.
I think we're probably being generous, but let's say 10%.
Okay. So with real estate, so we'll say that 10% is in there for 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, you cash out of the stock market. All is well after 5 years. You have $150,000. You've made, where I'm not even going to compound the interest because that's a little too hard in my head right now. You made $10,000 a year. You're going to pull it all out. You have $150,000. So in real estate, you have $100,000. That means you can buy a $500,000 asset because you only need to use that $100,000 as 20%. Okay. And so you now buy an asset. We'll say that your portion of the return is 20% a year. Okay. So that's going to be $100,000. At the end of 5 years, we say we sell the asset, you get 200,000. Compared to 150 in the stock market. So you made 50% more of a return. But that's if the market's just doing 4% market appreciation. You know, if you were to have bought in 2017 and sold 5 years later, your assets would be, you know, worth significant amount more. Hold on to that for 10 more years, you're going to have a significant amount more return. If you now strategically in year 2 did a refinance and pulled out some of that money, say $50,000-$60,000 because of your renovations, and you bought a second asset still with the same 100,000, now you have 2 assets that are continuing to go up in value. So it's I always say that everybody needs real estate as part of a diversified investment portfolio. I have stocks. I still have RSPs that are self-directed, meaning I self-direct them into real estate. And yes, that's a real thing. I can self-direct them into private equity funds, which are not traded on the stock market. I don't need a financial planner for that. So I'm not this person thinking, oh, my financial planner is taking 1 or 2% off the top. I don't have that. We have cash. We are working on getting some gold. Not that that matters, but so we're diversified, and I want people to understand that they need to be diversified, but acknowledge that real estate needs to be an asset class that you have in, and know your primary residence is not an asset in your pocket. Go read Rich Dad Poor Dad if you haven't already. So how do you you need to have security. You need to create your own security, and real estate's just one of those ways that you can create security.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Sorry, you had me there. I went down so many different thought processes as you were sharing that. And I think it really comes down to what you mentioned earlier about risk, and even the risk difference between someone that's perhaps looking at the BRRRR strategy versus someone that wants the turnkey versus someone that's not. You know, obviously there's an education piece that someone has to do before they can even make that jump. to
Yeah.
either one of those. And,
Well,
and how does someone broach that? How does someone get into that? Because, I mean, obviously they've got you, but how do they know that that's the way, that's a good way to go?
well, um, I never knew about mutual funds. I never did any education on mutual funds. And
Yeah.
I partnered with, we'll say partner, because I'm just sharing that terminology. I hired a financial planner.
Yeah.
And so walking my dog the other day, beginning of COVID, significantly far away from this lady, I said, how are you? She's an older lady, and, you knew there was going to be some investment stuff. And she said, I don't even understand that stuff. My investment advisor calls me up, whatever. The point being is that she literally stated, I have no idea about that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I was in the same pool. Like, I had no idea, but I loved my investor. And so I trusted her to be able to do what she needs to do. So to some degree, there's two sides of the real estate, same way that you can do your own stock markets, or you can hire a financial planner, whatever that kind of looks like for you, is you can go and learn the whole process, spend the, tens of thousands of dollars to do the education. Other than that, you're trying to get free stuff off the internet, and I don't necessarily suggest that. Or you can just partner with an expert. And, one of my partners out in British Columbia, who I've never met, I've never shaken her hand. She's never stepped foot in her asset, as much as some people might have a hard time thinking that. But the point is that people say, what do you mean? Like, tell me about your house in Midland. Tell me about this. And she said, I can't tell you anything about my house, but I can tell you about my partner, Mandy. She knows everything about the house. And I was like, yes, Lydia, that's what I want. I want people to understand that I know about the asset. I know where the asset class is. I'm overseeing the management of the asset and the, making sure it's performing at its highest and best use. That's what I want. That's what I do. Yeah. I want somebody just to be like, I got this girl Mandy in my pocket. Yeah. I can't even explain what she does, but she's made me lots of money. It's on my tax return. It's all legit. I've got an accountant, her accountant, all this kind of stuff. And we sleep at night. Nobody loses any sleep. Yeah. So there's just a part that I could sit here and say, yep, go get educated, because you know what? This isn't rocket science. What I is not rocket science. But what I've created is the systems around making it the easiest rocket that we can create.
Right. So going from that, how have you now transitioned into some of these other things like public speaking and that?
I kind of like to talk.
Put Mandy up there. She'll fill some.
She'll be fine. She doesn't need a microphone. It's good. Yeah. She resonates well. Yeah. Because I do what I love, and I love what I do. Now, I mean, you could put me on a stage of 10,000 people, and I'd love to talk real estate. This kind of conversation is the conversation that I could have. You asked me to stand on stage and be one of the, a fitness model girl who's in the backstage doing aerobics, and I'd be like, oh, you ain't finding me up on that stage, right?
But so, you also started, you started your own podcast as well, or show on Facebook Live, and it's called Full-Time Investor.
The Full-Time Investor.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I joined an online, what we always call him, managed service. So he does all of my social stuff, like underneath, like the roots of things that I don't really understand. Yeah. And he was like, you need to start a show, just start a show. So we bought cameras, we bought lights, and I was like, who are we? We bought this black drop. And then I was just like, I'm just going to show up like me. I'm just going to show up and talk and be the full-time investor. I am a full-time investor. I want people to understand this isn't a part-time gig. It's not a whatever. And, and if somebody's going to invest, they need to invest with somebody who's doing this full-time. So I was like, I'm going to call this the Full-Time Investor. Yeah. And so it just kind of took off. We just celebrated our 52nd episode taped earlier. And it's gotten out to a lot of people and shared a lot. And so it just becoming that expert in the industry. Yeah. I've shared the stage with experts, and then you kind of take a little piece of every little guest that you have to come along with you. So I've gone on to Crew Magazine, the Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazine. They have an event every year, and I've been on stage as a joint venture specialist talking about joint ventures. I've had a couple articles published in their magazine. Just stuff like that. Really, just stepping into it. I think we are more powerful than we ever give ourselves credit for. So when you actually step into your power,
Yeah.
you can tell.
Okay, so let me just ask a couple of quick questions as we kind of transition here.
Yep.
With regards to, I don't know, perhaps mentors.
Yep.
Do
Yes.
you have, you've mentioned Robert Kiyosaki a whole bunch, but
I have. I haven't necessarily studied under him, but
yeah,
his book changed my life. Like just, that like aha wake up call of real estate and understanding the difference between the rich dad and the poor dad.
yeah.
And really in our world, those two people would be backwards. Reading Think and Grow Rich. So I had one job that before I transitioned quickly into this, I had a job that I had a 45-minute commute to. And for 9 months, I listened to Think and Grow Rich on my CD. Larry downloaded it, and I just kept listening to it.
Yeah.
And that book really, like, it just stuck in my mind. So that was a big one. Mentor was when I left my job, when I put in my resignation, I called 3 people, my husband being the first one, a mentor of mine, Annette Jose. We're in a wealthy women mastermind together. And then my third person was the only other at the time full-time investor that I knew, and he was local to our area. And I called him and I was like, I can't believe it. I just handed it in. What the hell am I doing? Right.
Yeah.
So he had been in the same situation. And so, just kind of be like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. We're going to go look at properties, really just, dialing in and focusing on what the next step was after leaving the job. We were just going to, do real estate full time. So having that, he was a big mentor of mine, Andrew Brennan. I speak of him often.
Wow. And you mentioned a couple of books there. What are you reading these days?
So I study under a gentleman named John DeMartini. He's a human behavioral specialist. So I study human behavior, which is another reason why I study, like human behavior around wealth. He does a lot of wealth. His wealth CD, again, another CD that I've listened to for hours. I think I told him actually, it's like a $300 CD package. And I told him that made me $1 million by listening to it. Just really starting to dial in on your wealth consciousness, your wealth awareness. What are the words that I'm using around wealth? How do I feel when I say wealth? Have you ever said a number and you tense up?
Yes.
I want you to know what that number is. I want you to know why you said that and why you tensed up. You ever get butterflies in your tummy when you hear that you're getting a paycheck or a refinance check? Remember one of the first checks that I got on a refinance that was more than $100,000, and I had butterflies in my stomach, and I was like, oh my God, look at it, the number has increased. Whereas, some people, they'll be like, hey, I just got $100 from my boss, and they get excited. And I was like, I don't get excited about $100 from my boss. I not anymore, right? But
well, most people, it's when you ask them about a number, the number is always $1 million, right? So $1 million, probably because it's 649 or something like that. I don't know, but people have this number in their head, but they can't imagine beyond even that. That is the goal for a lot of people. And so
$1 million's not enough anymore.
Right.
$1 million's not going to be enough. You need 10 million is the new million. You need to push to it. I'm not at a $10 million net worth yet. I think it's a good goal to be able to have. But you realize you do have to work really hard to be able to get that. So just something to aspire to, right?
Any podcasts that you can put us on to that you recommend?
The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes is a really good one. The Everyday Millionaire with Patrick Francie in Rain, Canada. He's had some pretty cool guests on. There's lots on the real estate, but the Andrew Hines show, the Andrew Hines podcast is a great one on real estate. Super great quality of listening. Erwin Zito has one. Real Estate Investing in Canada, I think is what it's called. So
And so what's next for you now?
I'm going to be developing apartment buildings.
Mm,
Like
okay.
that's what's going to be next. So instead of, finding the Burr strategy, I'm going to create the property from the ground up. I mean, but that's a 10-year, like that's my 10-year goal.
Yeah.
Even maybe a 20-year goal.
Yeah.
We just started a new company. It's called Go Fog It. It's a natural disinfectant. So acknowledging that some of my wealth can be diversified outside of real estate, but yet have a beneficial interest in real estate.
Yeah.
So, we've got a property management company that benefits our real estate. We have a construction company that benefits our real estate. So to some degree, you're owning the companies that you're already paying anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this Go Fog It it kills COVID. So we'll see where that goes and launch it out to a few central Ontario cities in the next couple of weeks.
Wow.
More details to share on that later.
That's great. Well, I know there's people that are going to be listening to this in the States, so they might be looking to Canada for the solution.
There you go. It's on the Canada, the US, Health Canada, US regulations. So it's an all natural product. No crazy killers in this.
So if people want to get a hold of you, learn more, what do they do?
So I'd love for you to go to my webpage. It's mandybranham.com and sign up for a discovery call. Like, I'm just a normal person, peeps. I'd love to chat with you, see how we can add real estate to your investment portfolio. Or gosh, I'd just love to be able to tweak a few things to get you on the right route. Facebook, I'm really active on Facebook and Instagram. And you see my face, you'll hear my voice all over the place now.
That's great. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that we really need to share with people?
Yep. There is no mistakes. Okay. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I should have done that 5 years ago, or, oh, I wish I had her energy. There's no mistakes in life, people. You are listening to this at the exact time that you're meant to listen to this. And now is your time. So your choice. You can sit here and pretend that you didn't hear this conversation, or you can go home and you can start to pick up a good book. They're free at the library. They're free online. You can, generate your net worth statement and start to get real with yourself if you want. If you choose to. I love that word, and I love people to be able to use it. You can choose to do anything you want if you choose to. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but just understand that not doing it is a choice.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mandy, there were so many pieces of wisdom here, in the first part, and so many details here that I have to unpack. I kid you not, I've got 2 sheets of paper here that I just made notes, and I'm going to be able to go back over the video and the audio again. But it's a lot of great stuff that you've provided to me and to anyone listening and watching this. And so I want to thank you so much for that. And, we're definitely going to have to talk some more. I want to pick your brain some more on so many other topics. But thank you so much for joining this conversation. And
that's lovely.
I look forward to having you on again at some point.
I can tell when we resonate well. So it's when conversation just flows and my smile doesn't change and your smile doesn't change. So thank you, Neil. This was lovely.
Thank you very much. All right. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.